Hello and welcome to another Unmatched Style podcast. I'm here with Cameron Moll at the In Control Conference in Orlando. Thanks for being with us, man.
Thanks for having me.
Cool. Well, I've been wanting to ask you. You recently, within the past year and a half, you went full time, single employed, freelance style. So what are you doing?
Probably more than I should be.
That's often the case.
I usually tell people about 90% of what I do right now is running Authentic Jobs as kind of a one-man shop. I've got a few contractors I work with, but I take care of everything from just the strategy of the business to customer support, all of the front-end design, and then with these contractors I have them do the front-end markup, the back-end stuff, and so forth. And so that consumes most of my time. The other 10% is split between my letterpress posters, blogging, tweeting, speaking at conferences like this, and so forth. I tend to stretch myself a little too thin in those areas.
Well, I think we all have to run your own business like that. So how are you obviously you're running Authentic Jobs. How are you seeing things in the industry with job postings?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting time. I think our industry as a whole bounced back pretty fast from the recession, or whatever we want to call it, the downturn. And we're now seeing more listings posted to the site than we've ever seen in the 5-year history of the company. And as I look at our competitor sites, I'm seeing the same trends there, that they're seeing a lot of postings being put up. And so as the owner for Authentic Jobs, that's been fantastic to see that increase. But I think at the same time, not as many candidates are actively seeking work that they may have been seeking, certainly in the downturn, but even before then. And I think it's in part because our profession, our trade, has really matured at this point to where people understand what we do, they appreciate what we do, and we're kind of sought after in some ways. And so you're seeing a lot of companies that are having to proactively go after those people instead of just putting a listing out there and hoping that people come and apply to it.
Well, I want to shift gears a little bit about your Coliseum print.
Okay.
How did that come about? Why did you do that?
I think it came after I did the first print, which was of the Salt Lake Temple in Salt Lake City, and that style. Let's reference the style first, and then I'll come back to the Coliseum. That style grew out of me kind of pushing myself to try something I didn't know and I didn't know how to do. And that was this idea of taking letters and numbers and swashes and flourishes and designing things with them. So designing buildings or animals or things like that. And Veer did a great series of postcards that were like these 5x7-inch prints.
I remember that.
Called Type City prints. And I was really fascinated by these. This was like 4 years ago or something at this point. I was really fascinated by that style of design, so I got in touch with the designer at Veer who had done those prints, and I said, "Can you tell me how to do this? Because I don't know how, and it just intrigues me." And he gave me some great pointers, and I took that back, and I don't know why, I always like to try things on a bigger scale. So I said, forget 5x7, we're going 16x24, and put together that first poster that size. And it was a big challenge, not only to figure out how to do that style, but also to do something on that scale. And somehow I think I did a pretty good job with it. The people who follow me through my site or on Twitter caught wind of it and really wanted to purchase a copy, and so I ended up letterpressing them and started shipping them all over the world, and it kind of took off from there. It was really cool to see that happen. So by the time I knew I wanted to do something else, I think I did a tweet, like a tweet poll, and said, what are some places, what are some buildings, famous buildings I should consider for my next poster? And I got a variety of answers. I think the Eiffel Tower came up pretty high on that list, the Golden Gate Bridge, stuff like that. The Coliseum was the one I settled on, and I can't really tell you why I settled on that one, because it was probably the most challenging of the bunch to settle on.
So.
It would have been much easier to do the Eiffel Tower because there's far less detailed. Problem with the Coliseum too is, well, let me back up to the first one. The first one is kind of a 2D print, and you see only the facade, one side of the building. The Coliseum, you not only have the perspective of the building wrapping around, but if you stand in front of the Coliseum, the perspective also goes up.
Yeah.
And looking back, that was probably the worst choice I could have made for. It's probably that whole challenging myself thing. Well, I'm going to see how well I can do with this. And I think I saw it also as, maybe that's part of what it was, and that is that our 10-year anniversary was coming up with Suzanne and I. And I saw that as a means to kind of get away and spend our anniversary in Rome, and at the same time be there at the Colosseum and to photograph it and examine it. I don't do any buildings that I haven't seen in person and that I can photograph, because I use my own photographs. When I'm in Illustrator designing the thing, I have a photograph and I just start designing on top of it. And so I knew I had to be in Rome if I wanted to do
get your own angles and stuff.
Absolutely.
So you created the glyphs and the type for that yourself?
Some of them I did. Usually I rely on typefaces that have some tie to the period of the building or to the culture or something like that. So I certainly examined Italian type and Roman type with the Colosseum. And I stumbled on a book that was published about 450 years ago by, I think it's M. Giovanbattista Palatino. He was a calligrapher in Italy. And this book had been put together showcasing his work, and I found these beautiful glyphs, these very ornate letters in there. And I didn't necessarily know that I was going to use that on the Colosseum. I was just really studying Italian type at the time. But I think a few weeks later, as I was looking at the facade of the Colosseum and trying to fill in, you have the columns and the arches and all of that, and trying to fill in those spaces of the brick and the stone, I knew I needed something of a flourish-style typeface that would fill in those spaces. And my mind was drawn back to that book I had found, and I started examining those characters, and I said, these would be perfect if I could take them, recreate them as vectors so I could use them in the artwork, and then start filling the facade with that. And it worked out really well. I was able to retrace those. It was challenging to do that, but it worked. I think it worked out well to fill in and represent the stone and the brick that you see on the Colosseum.
Right. Well, along those lines, when you give your talk, you talk about the separation between working and then inspiration.
Okay.
It sounds like you had a little bit of that happened during that process. What do you mean by that?
Well, I've found that I think as designers, we talk about inspiration a lot, and I think we abuse that term a little bit. We see these posts like 25 inspiring homepage designs and so forth. For me, that's really when you have a body of work that you're looking at that matches the medium that you're working on for a given project. To me, that's more influence rather than inspiration, because you're looking at similar designs that are inevitably going to influence the design that you're working on. When I talk about inspiration, I really look at that as being kind of, it may be a related medium, but in many cases it may be unrelated. It may be music, it may be nature, it may be people, it may be, the design of this room we're in right now, the carpet and the walls and things like that. Who knows what might inspire me in a way to think differently on a project I'm working on. I think we've both seen sites, designs that were a little too influenced by the source that they drew those ideas from. Whereas design, it's original. You have to earn inspiration rather than kind of borrowing influence. And so I don't know if that's a perfect description of influence and inspiration, but that's helped me to understand that those resources like Unmatched Style are fantastic. I love having those at my disposal, and I think they're critical for what we do. But if we stop there, and that's all we're looking to for ideas, I think we're selling ourselves way short of being able to look to life outside of the web as a means of inspiring us in what we do.
Absolutely. Well said. Thank you for being here with us.
Thanks for having me.
All right.